everyone, my name is Mandeep. I work at the University of Hull in the Schools and Colleges Engagement team. And as Jon mentioned, I'm going to be talking about preparing for university. Now, when it comes to preparing for university, I've got a guide of top tips that I've put together, things that I wish that I knew before I started university. I was actually the first person in my family to go. So over the years, I've thought about all the different tips and I'd love to share them with you today. We're going to start off firstly by talking about, before you go to university, what are the things you can do. So just click on the next slide here. So I'm going to talk to you through about 3 top tips before you go to university and what you can start even doing now to prepare. Some of the tips are more related to if you're in year 13, but also they will still come in handy if you are in year 12 at the moment. Please feel free to screenshot any of the slides and ask questions as well as we go along. So let's get started. Firstly, one of the reasons you go to university, one of the main reasons, is actually to study a course and do something that you're really passionate about, and you could be spending 3 to 5 years doing that course. And the first tip really is just to look at the equipment that you need. So make a list or a mind map of books, material, pen, paper, all the things you might need. Bear in mind, when you're at school and college, sometimes they provide writing pads for you, pens, but these things aren't provided at university. One thing I received before I went to uni for my birthday was a new laptop, and that was a big deal back then, but it meant that I could study on an evening in my room without having to go to the library. So just little things like that. Also, books are a really big thing as well. So before you start any module, you should get a module handbook, and in there will be a list of all the books that you might need. It might be optional or core reading, and it's a good idea just to get a sense of, which sort of text you might need. Where do you get those texts from? Could you borrow them from the library, or do you need to buy them brand new? I actually used to study law before I did English literature at Hull, so I've kind of done half of one degree and then another degree because I changed my course halfway, and it was a very different experience getting books for law because I needed the latest text with the latest law compared to English literature. And a lot of my books were either ebooks from the library or journal articles online, and also I got a lot of my books very cheap from a book sale on campus. So there's various ways to do this. And also, before you go and start your course, another way to prepare could be that you need to do an online induction to maybe create a page on the Canvas page where all of your resources will be held for your module. So it's just worth looking into all of these things. A second tip for preparing for university is getting ready for independent learning. Chances are that you'll be moving away from home for the first time ever, and you've never really lived away from your family. There are a few key things to remember when it comes to living independently. The first thing is look at your food options and really consider it carefully depending on what you are after. So if you are a person who cannot cook, maybe consider catered accommodation. Your catered accommodation will be slightly more expensive than self-catered, so they'll add the cost of that usually onto your rent. So if you go for that option, you'll have your food provided and you won't really have to worry. And you'll avoid doing what I did, where I chose self-catered, I couldn't cook, and I ended up buying so many takeaways. Not only was that really expensive, but very unhealthy as well. So maybe if you look at self-catered, realistically think you have to go out and buy your food and cook for yourself. Maybe learn your top 2 or 3 recipes from each family member and just learn the basics and learn how to freeze food and defrost food properly, because that will save you money as well in the long run. It's so important to stay healthy at university, to keep a balanced diet, because you definitely need the energy. Domestic tasks always come up in this as well in terms of living independently. So learning how to use the washing machine, what detergent to use, what fabric softener, all these little details, or how to use the Hoover properly and how to clean out the bag from a Hoover as well. You don't want to be the housemate that's the messiest out of everyone, but you'll definitely get better at all of this as well as you go through your journey at university. And socialising early is always a really big tip. And in a COVID-19 world as well, this is something that you could even be doing now. So if you're about to start university, there might be online groups set up on social media, so you can even interact with people that might be living in the same accommodation as you, or even the same flat as you in your halls of residence. Socialising early means that you can have that conversation about what you will be bringing to university. So there's no point in everyone bringing pots and pans when that might already be provided for you in your shared kitchen. So just worth having these conversations. Top tip 3 is sorting out your life admin. So life admin is a term that I use when I talk about tasks that are really kind of associated with being an adult, you know, growing up, learning how to manage your own documents and things like that. And it's definitely worth spending a bit of time preparing for this before you go to university. So things like your bank account. If you've actually applied for student finance, your maintenance loan will actually be paid directly into your bank account. And it's worth looking around different bank accounts and different types of accounts that are available for students specifically. So some banks might offer you a free overdraft. They might even offer you a free rail card for 3 years while you have a bank account with them. And with a rail card, you can not only save £100 for 3 years, but it's a great way to save money, but also if you're thinking about going to visit family and using the trains, it's a great investment to have. So definitely check out different deals from different bank accounts as well. Transferring details is also important. So I had a friend who had a job at Morrison's in a local store when she lived at home. And when she moved to university, she simply transferred her job to the university city. So she could study during the day, and then on an evening, she would work her normal shift at Morrison's just in a different city. So you don't have to start from scratch and find a new job if you've already got into a routine of working and earning and studying. But with other details as well, it's worth transferring across. So for example, transferring your doctors and so registering at a local doctor's at the university city is a good idea. So rather than waiting until you're poorly and ill and need to see a doctor, organise that in advance. And then you feel like so many of these things are already set up before you even move to university. And other important documents as well you need to consider. So for example, one of my projects at Hull is I manage the student ambassador scheme, and whenever we recruit new ambassadors and train them, we actually ask to see their documents. So we need to see their passport details, we need to see their national insurance number, because obviously you can't have paid work without these things. So maybe keep a record of these things, keep them handy so you know where they are, and if you ever ask, you can have that evidence ready. The next 3 tips are going to be focusing around when you actually arrive to university. So again, you know, this is relevant to all year groups really. It just lets you know what you need to do in order to feel prepared when you arrive. The first thing is making the most of Welcome Week. So Welcome Week is usually week 1, the first week or 2 of your time at university, where you might not have your usual lessons. It's week 0 on your academic calendar, and it's a chance to basically move into your accommodation, meet your new housemates, find out more about clubs and societies at university, how to get involved, and meet your lecturers. And the first thing is, I would say it can be quite an overwhelming experience when you've just moved away from home and you're meeting all these new people. And the trick is really be selective during the Freshers' Fair. So usually in the first week or so of university, you'll have a range of clubs and societies who will have stands scattered around campus or near the Students' Union area. And they will have current students trying to recruit new students to their society. Now, it can be quite overwhelming when you walk into a room and you've got 100 different stands there. If you know that you love cricket or you love something like horse riding, find out where they're going to be on what day and go and have a conversation with them. So be a bit selective. Think about your hobbies, what you really enjoy doing, and what you want to get involved in at university. And it kind of leads me on to my next point as well. If you're not sure, one scheme that we have at Hull is a Give It a Go scheme. And it basically means that all societies will have one free session that they put on for visitors. And if you've always wanted to try something new, this is the best time to do it. So for example, I started university and I went along to the archery Give It a Go session. And I don't know why I chose archery, just something a bit different. Although I enjoyed the session, I decided actually it's not something that I want to continue because I wasn't really that good at it, but it was a lot of fun, and instead I joined the badminton society, so I used to play every Wednesdays. So it's a good way to test out what you enjoy and maybe what you don't enjoy as well. And my last tip in terms of Welcome Week is just bear in mind that some societies might charge you a membership fee. It could be, for example, £5 or slightly more if you join a sports team. This could be for registration fee, or it could be for insurance purposes, or it could be that you need a uniform as part of that society. So it's always handy to just keep aside some money to pay for these things, like your socials as well. My second tip in terms of what to do when you're at university is actually familiarising yourself with your new environment. And again, you know, as you go through your university journey, this will become second nature to you. But when you first start off, it can be quite scary getting to learn a new city, a new campus. My first tip is to explore the campus. And when I say this, it's not just to explore your lecture theatres and the classroom, the department that you're based in, but have a look around the university. One really good tip that my ambassadors have given is a lot of them wish they became student ambassadors in their first year, or if they do become ambassadors as soon as they start university, they receive training from us in terms of how to give a campus tour, and it opens their eyes to all the facilities available. And it's not only a great way to add skills on your CV, earn a bit of money and share information with visitors, but you feel a part of something bigger at the university because you are representing that university, and all universities will have some sort of ambassador scheme as well. Another tip is to go and explore the city that you're in. So if you're at a university that could be city centre based, you might already know a bit about the city. But if you've moved to a campus like Hull that's maybe 10 minutes away from the city centre, go and explore the shops, the museums, the tourist attractions. Like at Hull, we've got the Deep, which is this really big aquarium, and it's a great place to take your family when they come and visit you in your university city. So find out, you know, in your new local city, what's on offer for people, and you can always entertain people when they come and visit you. The other thing is you're going to have a lot of new details to remember. So this could be your new address for your accommodation. It's worth even keeping a copy or like a note of that somewhere, or whether it's your local taxi firm number, just so when you're out and about, maybe during Welcome Fest, or whether it's the first few weeks of uni, you're still finding your bearings, you've always got a number in your phone that you can call and get a taxi ride home. Just little things like that, I think, can make your life a little bit easier when you start university. And my final tip when it comes to preparing for university is know how to access student support and various opportunities. So at university, there is such a wide range of support available, whether it's the accommodation service, you're looking for a house to move into with your friends, whether it's you're struggling with your student finance and managing your money, you can go and speak to a financial advisor about budgeting your money. And all of this is free and provided with your student experience. You might find that you only need to access one of the support services or none of them at all. It's not something that you have to do, it's there if you need it. For example, at Hull, we've got all of our support services in one location in the Students' Union. So find out where they are and how to access them. Also, you have additional support in your academic area. So find out if you get, for example, we get an academic support tutor, which is a lecturer in your department who's assigned to you for your 3 years during your course. And if you need an extension on an essay or further advice about, you know, feedback that you've got on an essay, they're your go-to person. So find out who these key people are. And finally, get involved. You know, universities are great ways to explore yourself, you know, what you like, who you are as a person, expand on your skill set. I already talked about becoming a student ambassador. That's a little picture of all my ambassadors before we started our summer school last year. But there are other ways to get involved. You know, you could be a course rep, you can get involved in clubs and societies, you can even work on the committee for a society, you can become the president of the hockey society if you are, you know, great at managing people and you want to build your leadership skills, your teamwork skills. These are things that will carry you through graduation, and once you graduate from university, you can show off about all of these additional skills that you collected during your time at university. I just wanted to mention something really quickly as my last slide about COVID-19, because I know like it's a very uncertain time for a lot of people. But before I end this presentation, I just wanted to say that every university will be having a different approach to COVID-19. And it's definitely worth checking out universities' websites for further details. A lot of universities will be offering virtual campus tours, virtual open days, so definitely sign up to a lot of these things. However, each university will have a different approach. So Hull are thinking of doing a blended approach to teaching and learning in the new academic year. So this will be a combination of face-to-face sessions alongside online sessions, but every university will be slightly different. So it's very hard for me to inform everyone now on what universities in general are doing, but universities will generally follow government's advice and guidance very clearly to ensure that everyone's safe and secure as well. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. I hope it was useful. As I mentioned, you can ask me loads of questions. I'll go on the Q&A tab now. And for now, I'll hand it back to Jon, who will introduce the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mandeep. Excellent session on preparing for university. I'm like you, I prefer badminton to archery as well. Really, really good session. And as Mandeep said, the Q&A is open, so please do use it. It's a great opportunity to ask Mandeep questions, but also Michelle and Amy when she finishes her session as well. Just a quick shout out in terms of recordings. I'm always asked about recordings. The recordings of all events are available at uniTasterDays.com/Tuesdays. And also, if you want to find events from a particular university, you can find those events at uniTasterDays.com/online. But if I can now introduce our second speaker, it's Amy Knott. Amy is an Outreach and Recruitment Officer at Arden University. And I'm really looking forward to this session. It's on distance and blended university learning, which is very much in the news at the moment with various approaches that universities are taking, perhaps with COVID-19 in mind. But Amy's going to tell us more about it. And with that in mind, Amy, I'll pass it straight over to you, please.
Thanks, Jon. So yeah, just to introduce myself again, my name's Amy and I work for Arden University, and today I'm going to be talking to you about distance and blended learning. So I cut up this slide at the start because I'm sure when I said the words Arden University, distance learning, blended learning, many of your faces probably looked a little bit like the people on the screen right now. Arden University are quite a new name within higher education, and distance and blended learning are terms that not everyone is familiar with, as they're more different than traditional higher education. But obviously I'm going to dispel and some myths and tell you a little bit about what they mean and what's involved with them today. So I thought just for a bit of fun kind of at the start of the session, I would put up what came into my head, first of all, when I look at the words distance and blended, without looking at it from a learning context. So for distance, I thought of long distance running. So Mo Farah, Olympic hero, or with some controversy now, but yeah, long distance running was one that I kind of thought of. And the other one I thought of was the big song from Disney's Hercules, Go the Distance. So for any Disney fans out there, that's what I thought of. And when I thought of blended, I thought of blender, and I thought of a food blender and a beauty blender for any of you chefs or makeup artists out there. So they're the kind of things that you may think of when you see these words. And I'll try and kind of relate these to what they actually mean in a learning context. So I'm going to define what distance and blended learning mean now. We're going to start off with distance learning. So the word distance implies a distance between you as the learner and your university, in the sense that you do not have to attend or visit your university to undertake learning there and undertake your degree there. So that's where the distance comes in. So like kind of Mo Farah, there's a long distance, you don't have to make any journeys like Hercules did. That's distance learning. In simpler terms, it's a fully online learning experience. And it's kind of really suited to people who might have quite a lot going on in their lives and have quite a lot to fit in. So like to kind of not have to go anywhere and can do their learning whenever and wherever they want to. Now, obviously Arden offer distance learning courses, which is why I'm kind of talking about it today, but a lot of other unis do offer this as well. So the one that you probably will have heard of most of all is the Open University. They're pretty well known for being specialists in just distance learning. So there are much more kind of distance learning opportunities out there available nowadays. And what I will say is the tuition fees are often a little bit lower for distance learning compared to the more traditional higher education courses, because obviously you're not kind of using the same in-person facilities as you would do. Everything takes place online, as I say. And distance learners often acquire vital life skills such as time management and organisation, as it says on the slide, because when you're a distance learner, you really have to take ownership of your learning. It's really down to you. And motivation and discipline are really important to make sure that you're kind of staying on track, because as I say, you're taking more responsibility. But they're really key life skills, really key transferable skills, because you'll be asking yourself, you know, what time of day do I work best? Am I a early bird, or am I a night owl, or do I like to work in long stints or short bursts? These are the types of things that you've really got to get to know when you're a distance learner. Okay, so that's distance learning explained a little bit. Now we'll move on to blended learning. So in one of my earlier slides, we talked about food blenders and beauty blenders to help you kind of blend food together or makeup onto your face. This one's a bit more self-explanatory. It's blended learning is a blend of online distance learning and in-person face-to-face learning. Now the format of this will depend on the university and the course. So I'll start off by kind of saying that the format may be different. In a minute, I'll show you an example timetable of a blended learning student at Arden, just to give you an example. But obviously other unis do offer this as well, and as Mandeep just said, maybe considering it a bit more widely now, because we have to consider COVID-19 and social distancing and that type of thing. So hopefully this will be quite useful for you in case blended learning does come up at other universities now. But I think UEA, Uni of Manchester, do quite a few of these courses, and CU, which is a branch of Coventry University, have various study centres where you can do blended learning. So some other unis to look for there. And basically blended learning might be a bit more suitable for someone who still needs a bit more flexibility with their learning, but they still want a little bit of structure. You know, they still like the idea of going into a university and having physical lectures, being able to see like a student support team and meet their peers and that type of thing. So there is an element of flexibility, though not necessarily as much as distance learning, but you have just that more structure by going into the university. Tuition fees are usually a little bit cheaper again than traditional university, but not usually as cheap as distance learning courses, so something to consider there. So now up on the screen, you should see an example blended learning timetable. So this is one that we mock up for Arden students. So at Arden, for example, they get 8 hours face-to-face learning per week, split into 2 4-hour sessions. Now, obviously, usually that would be at one of our study centres. At the moment, it's online, but it's still timetabled. And then the other blue box that you can see is where we encourage people to do independent learning, which we usually ask for about 25 hours per week. Now, this isn't monitored or anything like that, but that's where you do going through your lecture materials, wider reading, your assessment and that type of thing. But as you can see, like there's still plenty of other space around it. So that's when we talk about kind of flexibility and other things that you can fit in. There may be other caveats as well, such as like smaller class sizes, because you know, people are in a bit less often and things are a bit more small scale. For both distance and blended learning at Arden, I think this is probably similar elsewhere as well. You only tend to study one module at a time, so quite good because you just have to focus on one thing, and also you don't have lots of exams or assessments all due or happening at the same time. So there are a couple of other caveats to that. Now, what I'll say is a lot of distance and blended learning courses, because of the focus of online, the kind of focal point of your learning experience will be via an online learning portal. Now, the one at Arden is called iLearn, but I know lots of different unis use lots of other places, Canvas, I think Moodle, there's a few different ones. And basically everything that you need for your learning will be based on this online portal. So especially important for distance learning where you don't have any physical lectures anyway, but you still use it for kind of blended learning. And you know, it can be accessed 24/7 wherever you are in the world, and all you need is an internet connection and a device. So whether you're on the bus or train somewhere, you can be checking it on your phone, or you can be at home, a lot of people at home, or in more normal circumstances at coffee shops or libraries or anything like that. So it's really your kind of key learning resource. And on there, you'll have induction materials to help you like begin at university and have everything you need there. You'll have all your lectures to work through, your online library. So we don't have a physical library at Arden, for example. All books are available online, and that's where you can see your articles and stuff as well. and forums with staff and students. These are really key, because especially if you're a distance learner and you're not physically seeing anyone, this is your opportunity to really connect with your academic tutors and lecturers and your peers. So it's really encouraged to kind of use those forums to discuss the kind of pieces of work, assessments, and things outside of university as well. And I know a lot of students end up setting up WhatsApp groups and things like that to kind of stay in contact as well. So you can really build up a community. I think a myth is that it's a very isolating experience, and I think it can be, but there is definitely support and things available out there and things you can do to make sure that it's still a very connected experience. Other things outside of kind of your actual subject is there's usually kind of well-being and welfare facilities to help with things like mental health issues or managing stress, productivity, a healthy lifestyle whilst you're at university. Usually access to study skills resources, so to help you kind of reference your essays, or perhaps write critically and just help with your kind of writing skills, and there may be tutors to help you out with that, and careers facilities as well, so maybe e-learning to help you upskill, and things to help you develop your CV, interview skills and that type of thing. So it's still the same as traditional university. Everything is there that you need, it's just available online for wherever you need it. But you'll still have a dedicated student support team to help you out, so there is still a person there to kind of speak to, and that'll be the same across all universities. Okie dokie. So what I thought I'd pop up on the screen now is some examples of the types of students that we have that study distance or blended learning, or that it may suit. So for instance, any young parents or carers having to balance childcare, you know, that the flexibility enables this and enables a lot of the things on this screen here. So that includes full and part-time working. Independent learners, so some people just like to get on with things in their own way, at their own pace, and things like distance learning particularly would really kind of suit those types of people. Obviously, everyone makes a big deal out of kind of making sure you're employable when you graduate from university, and that is really important. And just having that bit more flexibility allows you to undertake different work experiences and really throw yourself into working out what you went to do when you graduate, and start developing skills and getting experience under your belt. So when you do graduate, you're well equipped with your degree, but also work experience as well. Commuter students, if you're not thinking of moving away, you know, you don't have to be in that much. There's that less of that pressure. We have people who've competed with professional sports, but also want to develop another side of themselves, because often, you know, that doesn't last forever as a career, so they want to develop another side. Those with hospital appointments and various medical needs that maybe would find traditional university a bit intense, something a bit more small scale and personalised might suit them. We have a lot of our students who are developing their own business, and this again allows some flexibility there. And volunteers and travellers, so it's just various other things that kind of you can be doing, but we have students all over the world. It's a real global community, and people are, you know, travelling and doing work in hostels and things like that. It's quite amazing what you can fit in alongside your degree and the opportunities that are available when you just have that bit more flexibility. So for the next slide, I included some questions that you may wish to ask yourself to help you to work out what mode of learning is best suited to you. So the key when you're choosing university, if that's what you decide to do, is working out what's best for you. It's not about kind of what's best, what your friend's doing, or necessarily you know, what people expect you to do. You need to work out what is going to be best for you and what you want to get out of university. So these questions will hopefully guide your thought. I just want to hone in on the do I want to study full-time or part-time question. So a lot of distance learning courses are part-time courses. Now this usually allows for a bit more flexibility of pace of study. So for instance, our distance learning courses, you can take up to 6 years to complete an undergraduate degree, as opposed to the 3 years, which is a standard degree. So you have a bit more flexibility in how long you take to study the degree. However, you can't always access the maintenance loan, so the loan to help you with living costs, if it's a part part-time course, so just make sure you check whether the courses are full-time or part-time. On the flip side, our blended learning courses are full-time, so you can access the maintenance loan to help with living costs from student finance, but you study at a full-time rate, so there is less kind of flexibility with the pace of study. So just something to bear in mind. And then, yeah, some other questions there that you may wish to screenshot or take a photo of, and some more here as well. So as I say, that should just hopefully guide your way of thinking and help you work out what it is you truly want. There's so many options out there for university and you know, degree apprenticeships and things like that as well, that you want to make sure that you're making the right decision for you, and honing it down to really help you succeed. Now, I just wanted to mention Unibuddy. So I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's still very well me kind of going, this is blended learning, this is distance learning, but I'm sure some of you would actually quite like to find out what it's like to really be a distance or blended learning student. And what you can do is you can go onto the Arden website and actually have a chat with some of our current students. And I'll caveat this by also saying that a lot of universities now use Unibuddy. So I'm not just kind of promoting Arden here. Please go on university websites and see if they've got Unibuddy, because then you can really find out what it's like to study at that university and get that first-hand insight. So it's a really good tool there to kind of find out about different universities and what they're like. I believe there's also a section on the UCAS website that has like lots of different students from lots of different unis all on one page, so that's something to look at as well. But you know, hearing from students, you get the tea, so that's a good resource to use. And for any advisors and teachers that are on the call, I just wanted to do a quick shameless plug about a webinar we're doing tomorrow, which is more specific to Arden University, and you can sign up on UniTasterDays or message me and I can message you the link to sign up. And we do also have an open day in July if you're a student. But I'll finish up there and just kind of finish by saying, yeah, that's a whistle-stop tour of distance and blended learning. I hope that kind of makes sense and you kind of understand a bit more what's involved with both of those. They're both kind of more non-traditional university methods and both quite different to what traditional unis offer, but as Mandeep said, that could be changing this academic year. But the last thing I'll end on is I say I hope you don't have go the distance in your head from Hercules for the rest of the day, because it's definitely going to be in mine. But I hope that was useful. Thanks very much, everyone.
My name's Michelle, as Jon said. I'm from the University of Cambridge, and the topic I've chosen to talk about is supercurriculars and wider reading. So basically, the reason I picked this topic is because I often get asked by students, you know, what can I do to make my application stand out? I'm thinking of applying to this university for this course, and I just don't really know what to write about in my personal statement. So hopefully this presentation will give you some ideas of what sorts of things universities are looking for in the sorts of students who are applying. And the best way to stand out is to engage in this supercurricular learning, and then tell us all about all the wonderful things that you have done. So very quickly then, what are supercurriculars? Many of you might have heard the term kind of extracurriculars before, and supercurricular is something that's a little bit different. So supercurriculars, when you're engaging in academic work, which can be reading, but it could equally be watching a documentary, or it could be doing your own research project, but it's important that you're doing it in your own time. So not the sorts of things that you're doing as part of your schoolwork, but kind of you know, things that you're doing at home or outside of school, which just show that you're going beyond what you're being taught at school. So it's not the same as extracurricular, which could be things like playing sports. I've got an image there of Quidditch, which is a popular university sport. So as Mandeep spoke about earlier, there's so many opportunities to get involved in things when you go to university. But yeah, sorry, I'm going off topic now, but these are kind of considered extracurricular because they're not related to the course or the subject that you want to study at university. That being said, some things that might be supercurricular for one person might be extracurricular for another. So for example, if you were applying to study music, then playing in an orchestra would be supercurricular for you because it's related to the course that you want to do. Whereas if you're applying to do law, for example, then maybe playing in an orchestra isn't as relevant to studying law. So why is it important to do a bit of supercurricular? Well, the first thing I think is that it's really helpful for helping you to choose your university course, because one of the things that's really great about university is that there are loads of courses out there, many of which you might not really have had much experience of before. So, you know, courses like, I don't know, economics or psychology or medicine or engineering, there's lots of different subjects which you might not have come across before at school. And if you're not really sure what they are and what they would involve, then doing a bit of supercurricular activity in that subject will give you an idea of whether it's actually something that you would really enjoy when you go to university. Equally, you might think that you want to study a particular course, but then you read a book about it or read an article about it, and actually you found it was kind of boring and you weren't that interested in it. And that might give you a sense that actually maybe that course isn't suitable for you. The next thing it helps you to do is to prepare you for university and for independent learning. So one of the ways in which university is quite different to what you're used to at school is there's a lot more scope to kind of do your own thing and choose the kind of topics you want to focus on. So rather than at school where your teacher will give you, you know, this is the book that we're studying, these are the questions you're going to answer, here's the essay you're going to write. At university, you're probably more likely to go to a lecture on a given topic, and then you go away and read a bit more on your own and maybe come up with your own essay question, for example, your own project to take. So there's a lot more independence, a lot more choice when it comes to university learning. So if you're doing supercurricular, which is stuff you're doing outside of school, then obviously that gives you a lot of freedom and scope to choose, you know, to look into topics that are really interesting to you. Doing supercurriculars as well will help you to demonstrate your interest in your chosen subject. And that's really important because universities, when they look at your application, they want to know that actually you thought about the course that you've applied to, and it is something that you would be interested in and can stick with for the next 3 to 6 years potentially. So just being able to demonstrate some concrete examples of where you've engaged with that subject before will help give admissions tutors at universities a sense that you know what you're getting into, basically. So how do you do that? You would maybe write about them in your personal statement. And if you're applying for a course where there are interviews, you might want to talk about them at interviews, or you might get asked about them there as well. And finally, I think in general, doing some supercurricular activity really helps you to develop some transferable skills, which are obviously useful for applying to university and going to university, but just useful in life in general as well. So, you know, developing your skills of critical thinking is, you know, generally helpful no matter where you are. So what are some examples of supercurriculars? So the first thing to say is that there's no right or wrong way to go about supercurricular activity because there's so many different things that you could engage with. So it could be reading books, it could be wider reading. Often people talk about wider reading as a great way to get involved, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to read a whole book. You could potentially read just a few chapters from a book, or, you know, looking for shorter things to read, such as journal articles. If you're not as engaged by kind of written text, then you could think about watching documentaries and films instead, or potentially other videos online. If you go on YouTube, for example, there'll be lots of recorded lectures that you can listen to, or things like TED Talks on lots of different academic topics. If you're a fan of podcasts or radio shows, that can be a really good way to engage in supercurricular as well. I really like podcasts because you can go on your daily commute, or you know, if you're going for your socially distanced walk at the moment, you can put on a podcast and learn something cool whilst enjoying the outside as well. So they're really good to have on just in the background, and you can learn lots of things through those as well. There's also kind of more hands-on ways you could get some supercurricular activity in. For example, lots of universities host competitions where you can enter things like essays or take photos of work that you've done. There could even be social media competitions, but as long as you're kind of engaged in an academic activity, then that's what we're looking for. You could also go to visit museums when they reopen, but equally lots of museums have online websites where they kind of digitize their archives and put lots of great information online as well. And of course, other educational websites will have things that you can look at as well. If you're more hands-on, then actually, supercurricular could be doing your own project in your own time outside of school. So it could be something like building or modeling something physical, or even just building with Lego. Or it could be, for example, doing some coding in your spare time if you're interested in studying computer science. Lots of ways that you could do your own work and kind of engage in an activity at home. So just for a few more kind of concrete examples, I just have this slide up here of some examples of places you could go to find some supercurricular activities. And this is going to really depend on what subject you're interested in and the course you're looking to apply to. So for example, if you want to apply for a science course, then a good way to engage in supercurricular might be reading a scientific article in something like New Scientist or the British Medical Journal or Nature magazine. There's lots of things you can find online, or equally you could purchase a subscription. Many schools will also have free kind of resources like this, or you might be able to get them in your library, so you don't even have to pay. There's also, as I mentioned, podcasts. If you go onto iTunes U, there's loads of educational podcasts on there, as well as on BBC Radio 4. Some of your parents might listen to those shows, but they are honestly really good for people looking to apply to university as well. So how can you find things to do? Well, one of the easiest ways is just to search online. So if you're looking to apply for a certain course, let's say it's economics, just search, economics supercurricular and see what comes up. But one search tool that I would really recommend is Google Scholar, because what that does is that it looks specifically for academic articles that have been published in academic kind of journals and publications. So you know that there's kind of a level of reputation there, and it's not just kind of a random person's internet website. So if you go on Google Scholar and you search for a particular topic that you're interested in, I don't know, let's say you're going to apply for geography and you're really interested in deforestation, you could just search that and find all kinds of different articles and research on that topic. You could also check university websites, who often post reading lists for prospective students as well as potentially for students on their course. So for example, if you look at a university website and find their first year reading list, that might give you a few things that you could read right now, which will get you ahead of the curve and be able to demonstrate that you actually really would enjoy this course. Also consider how you can get things for free or very cheaply. So libraries are a really great resource. I know obviously a lot of them are closed at the moment, but lots of them will have online resources that you can access or online subscriptions to journals. So do have a look at what's available to you. And also consider, what's local to you, what's around where you live. There might be a great museum or really good workshop opportunities. There might be opportunities to do some work experience. So if you're applying for a course where it's quite vocational, for example, medicine, then if you can get some work experience, obviously once, COVID has passed, then that would be a good way to engage in supercurricular as well. But when you're looking for that supercurricular activity, I've got some tips here to kind of help you to look for things, because there is so much out there, and actually you don't need to spend loads and loads of time on these things. In fact, it's better to probably spend a little bit of time on a few things that are really interesting to you than to spend lots of time trying to plow through things that aren't particularly interested. So, think about the format that would engage you. If you enjoy watching videos, for example, then look for videos. If you prefer things in a written format, then read books. Don't worry too much about what you think might look good in your application or what might look good to universities, because what they care more about is that you've explored your own interests, whatever they may be. And just to give an example of that, I brought a little prop because I found in my bookshelf an example of some supercurricular reading that I did when I was in year 12. And I ended up studying philosophy, and basically I had not studied that subject before at school. And I really didn't know what it was about, but I found this book. I don't know if you can see or read that, but it's called Batman and Philosophy, because I was a big comic book nerd. I really liked the Batman films when they came out, the Christopher Nolan ones, and I also read lots of graphic novels in the Batman universe. And this book just really caught my attention because it introduced lots of academic content in a very digestible and entertaining way. And I actually wrote about this on my personal statement. I can't imagine any academic at a university would think, wow, you know, Batman, that's a really academic topic. But it doesn't matter because it's still engaging in something super curricular. It introduced these concepts to me in a really easy to think about way. And actually there was lots of good learning that I did on this. It talks about, you know, ethics and morality, all kinds of philosophical concepts. So that's what I mean by don't worry about what might look good, and just think more about actually what are your interests and what areas do you really care about and would be interested in. The last thing though to consider is make sure it's a reputable source. And I kind of mean that in quite a general way. You know, this book is written by academic philosophers, but it's not the most serious of texts, and that's fine. But just make sure that when you're kind of reading things to have a critical eye about it, and, you know, just check that what you're reading is, you know, factual, is evidence-based, that it's kind of generally accepted in the academic content. So what should you do whilst you're engaging in this supercurricular activity? Well, one of the things is, bear in mind that you're going to be applying to university possibly next year or the following year. And it could be a long time between when you apply and when you've actually done this supercurricular activity. So, you know, do keep a record of it. Write down the names of books that you've read, maybe write down a few notes at the same time, just so that when it comes to then, you know, talking about it in your personal statement, you can very easily refer back to it. Have a think about how you're engaging in that content as well, because one of the things with supercurricular activity is that it's not just about memorizing lots of facts or learning about a new topic, but actually, you know, engaging with it beyond that and going deeper. You know, thinking about, you know, if you've done an activity, how did you go about solving that problem? What were the challenges you found? How did you engage with it? What did you think about it? Did you agree or disagree? These are all things that universities really love to see and hear about from applicants, because it shows that you've gone a bit deeper and you're not just taking everything at face value. And then have a think about how you could follow up with more things that interest you. So if you read an article that's kind of an introduction to a topic and it really, you know, sparked your interest in it, then maybe have a look at where else you could find more information, maybe contrasting viewpoints, maybe more recent research. It could be anything, but actually, you know, doing a deep dive on a given topic is often better than doing lots of very shallow dives into lots of different topics. So how do you demonstrate this to universities? I've mentioned personal statements quite a few times in this this presentation, and that's probably the key way that you're going to be able to demonstrate it to the universities. So when you do your supercurricular activities, you're going to want to talk about having done it in your personal statement. So go into detail about what it is that you did exactly. You know, explain what you learned, how did you go about it, what kind of thoughts did you have about it, and you know, what kind of your journey was through that academic content. It's always better to choose a few rather than many. So as I said, you know, doing a deep dive on a few topics is generally better than doing lots. But at the beginning, it's totally okay to explore lots of different kinds of things until you kind of get a better sense on what it is that you find really interesting. And as I said, you know, focus on the things you found interesting, not the ones that you did just because you thought someone would think you sound really clever. Because bear in mind that, for example, you might be asked about it if you go to interview. And if it's something that you didn't really find very interesting, then it's going to be a lot harder to talk about and a lot harder to demonstrate your enthusiasm. And then if you do go and apply for a course where there is an interview, so for example, in medicine, lots of courses will do interviews. If you're applying for Oxford or Cambridge, there'll be interviews for all of our courses. Just remind yourself of what kind of supercurriculars you've done, because it will give you some confidence because you have things to talk about, but equally they could ask you questions about things you've mentioned in your personal statement. So that's it from me. Hopefully that gives you kind of a good introduction to supercurricular activities, and just, you know, goes to show how many different things you could do right now. Equally, don't go mad about trying to fit in loads and loads of supercurriculars. As I said, be guided by your interests. Hopefully these are things that you really enjoy doing anyway, so it won't feel too much like extra work. So thanks very much for listening.